Hello, this is Lisa Lee and welcome to this week's pick a card reading. This is going to be organized kind of differently. When I sat down to get ready to do readings today, I encountered an energy that gave me like a really powerful vision with a very powerful like magic to that vision even, I would say. And this was very much an energy that was like an earth energy. Very ancient, but this energy said I come, offering revelation, and I do these revelatory readings. And so when you're working with a spirit of revelation, that spirit of revelation is going to show you something that once you see it, you can't unsee it. And that new way of seeing it like clicks right in. And so when it comes to the blockages that are represented with these three piles, and if you found this reading, in all likelihood, the way that this is going to be organized, each pile will represent a blockage that you might have to work through. And so it ends up being a very long reading if you want it to be. If you're going to feel it out as you go along. But ultimately, this energy came to me and said, I can show you revelations related to these blockages that will allow you to like, be free of the blockages. And so the magic with this reading is a freedom from the blockages through that revelation. And so these three piles actually operate a lot more like three chapters. And the way that we're going to organize this reading is wherever you are drawn to, whatever pile you are drawn to is the blockage that you are operating or dealing with right now. If you are drawn to start from beginning, pile number 1, pile number 2, pile number 3, then that's again just like, intuition based. If something else calls you, that might be your guides sort of saying, hey, work on this first. Because I do think that there's going to be a lot to process and digest with what we get through in the way of revelations around some of these blockages. There is a TikTok video tacked to the end of this video. I'm pretty sure. I'm going to sort of figure out how I can do that. If you want to watch the intro, I guess, to this in terms of what this energy said in the way of a vision, in terms of removing those blockages and the sentinels that keep you from the relationship with the divine in the way that would like allow you to be free of this stuff. And so there is going to be also like, in addition to these three piles, a last bit that I'm going to have as also time-stamped as like almost like a bonus, where we're going to talk a little bit about the relationship that I saw with this vision. So that is a lot, and I don't know how coherent it is, but if you were drawn to this reading, I encourage you to stick around and just see if it speaks to you. So there are three piles, and I do want you to be intuition led in the way that you choose where to go, where to start with this reading. But pile number 1, we've got the Care Bear with the shamrock belly. Pile number 2, we have the twin kitties. And pile number 3, we have the rainy heart Care Bear. And so the timestamps are below, and I look forward to doing this reading with you. This is going to be really interesting, and I think we're going to get some great magic done today. So let's go ahead and start. Hello, this is Lisa Lee. Welcome to pile number 1. If you chose to start with this obstacle is going to present itself in the form of a fool card. And again, like the obstacle with the Fool card is just going to be, starting anything and getting it to the finish line. Things that get in your way on your journey, like basically like the kind of journey, with this card presenting as like the sentinel that you have to overcome in order to get to that revelation, that wisdom. You first have to look at this pattern. And this pattern isn't just set up for you, it's set up for everybody, but like you in particular have the power to overcome this. And it's where no matter what you do, no matter how hard you try, no matter what you start, something gets in the way of your success. Something sort of circumvents that arrival. And so let's go ahead and get some cards around that, because what I saw with that first vision was that 8 of Wands represents gobbed up communication. So arriving to where you're sort of aiming to get, that journey, it requires you to sort of open those communication channels. And the way to open those communication channels, we were told, was through learning, really. Learning and helping yourself get the tools to be the messenger and to step into the role of the messenger. So the opposite of this Fool card is the messenger who is like learned and kind of has a message to bring and brings it. And so once those communication channels aren't gobbed up, you should be able to get get where you're going. But let's go ahead and unpack this problem just a little bit further. Let's get the particular revelation that is going to enable us to actually like get where we're going generally. And there's a lot of false starts with this particular obstacle. A lot of false starts, and those false starts lead to learned helplessness. And so that's sort of the energy of the sentinel that you have to overcome. Their whole like mode of operate, like the goal of what they're doing is to sort of put you in a place where you have a learned helplessness and you don't even try. You don't even think to try, because the obstacles against you are so big that there's no way that you're taming them enough to get where you're going. And so that strength card, I think what's really kind of powerful about this pile is that I can tell that with that strength card that you are, and that Four of Swords, a wounded warrior to a certain extent. Yeah, this has been a lot. You've had a lot against you in terms of your progress. And with this Queen of Wands, we are talking about a fighter. And so let me take a look and see what we're looking at here in terms of like this sentinel. Yeah, this is like being stuck in liminal spaces, not being able to escape liminal spaces. So there's this liminal space problem where you're somehow, you might even be addicted to an internal feeling space that's kind of getting in your way to a certain extent. Again, like, you know, when we look at this Fool card and we understand that it's a sentinel, that it's guarding the gate of that wisdom that kind of sets you free, that knowledge that allows you to release, then we have to understand that like there is some part of this where there's a setup, there's a showdown, and like it's going to be work and it's going to be difficult and it's going to take some reckoning, you know what I mean, to overcome the pattern, the learned helplessness that has gotten you to the place where you figure that there is no choice. You're just going to have to let's see what the strength card represents here. Let's see what that means, because that choice is not an easy one. That Two of Coins is like, make a choice. Just make a choice. All you have to do is get up every morning at 5 o'clock and go running. Just make the choice. You know what I mean? Like that's what this kind of energy says. And that feeling, you know, with the strength card is like, are you kidding? Like, what choice are you telling me that? Oh yeah, get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and run on my broken legs. Like I can absolutely. So that's sort of the feeling there with that strength card and that Two of Coins. And so like this is an odd thing with the Fool card, and even with this energy who's kind of communicating with us around these notions of like overcoming these sentinels, because this energy said like, I want you to step into my vantage point, and I don't want you to think of them as blockages. I don't want you to think of them as like mental hang-ups. I don't want you to think of them as like confidence issues. I want you to think of them as like entities guarding that tree. And that tree is like the divine, and that tree is being in love with the divine, and the love going back and forth, and you creating with the divine. And that, I think, is your inheritance and your birthright. But when we think about this Fool card as a sentinel that is designed, its program is to keep you from access to that tree on the basis of every time you start something, you fail, and it chips away and it chips away and it chips away and it chips away until you are working with a limited amount of strength, and that strength just gets you going. But, you know, it just keeps you sort of operational at this Four of Swords, very wounded place. And then being bound, the binding of the adversary here in terms of your journey with Six of Swords towards that place of safety and safe harbor. Yeah. Any kind of peace, you know, is challenged by this energy that is trying to keep you in choppy waters. And with that Queen of Wands being about you're this warrior, the universe sees you as a warrior. And so the first thing that you're going to get with this reading is like a congratulations on being the warrior that you are. So let's take a look at this story a little bit here. The Two of Wands. So what does it mean for you to get past this? What does it mean for you to heal from this? Because these energies that I'm pulling right now represent the help that's available for you and the instruction around that help. And that bottom of the deck energy is the High Priestess. cut to Two of Swords. Yeah, I saw this before. So again, we're talking about a blockage, and the High Priestess represents a type of silence. And this Fool card, you know, to unblock the path, one of the main things that we have to focus on is undoing those gobbed up communication. Those channels of communication for you are gobbed up in a lot of different ways. And so when we think about like what it means for you to communicate, because this Strength card, this wrestling something and wrestling something and wrestling something, it's like you're wrestling like lies almost. How do I put this right? Because it's not like you're lying to yourself or you're being like, you know, greatly deceived or something like that. Whatever it is that you feel like you have to like wrestle into place, like, you know, tackle into submission, or like arrive at, like be worthy of, like there's something here that's taking a ton, and I mean a ton of energy that your guides kind of want to relieve you of this in terms of like facing down this sentinel and these communication channels. It's taking a lot of energy for you to find a way to communicate, for you to communicate clearly, for you to find the time to communicate, the people who will allow you to process with them, you know, like everything that is required is operating like something that you can't overcome. You can't overcome the limitations of there not being the kind of people in your life that can sit and process things with you and allow you to have a sounding board. You know, for various reasons, that's just not there. Even if it was, like, what would it mean? There are things that you don't feel will be accepted if you speak about them. There are things that you feel about your past experiences that you are ashamed of in one way or another, that they can't, you know, you have to sort of gatekeep that stuff in terms of like who has access, who doesn't. There are expectations of types of rejection based on messaging that you've received for being a certain way. You know, there's a lot that goes into this wrestling that is kind of keeping you in a position where you feel like there's not a choice to really unblock those channels of communication because of all of the different things that exist in the way of impediments. Now, that Fool card representing the distractions, that Fool card representing, and it's the Fool card as its meaning is like starting off on a brand new journey and taking that leap of faith. In this particular as presenting as an obstacle, it's not being able to do that for all the reasons that you can't take a leap of faith in a new direction, start in a new way, you know, just rise up from the dead in some instances. I feel that. And so your guides are basically saying, you know, what it's going to take for you to unblock those channels of communication is to first realize that there is a lot that is actually blocking the channels of communication. And a lot of these are ways that we have learned to communicate that block the channels of communication, ways that we've been conditioned to communicate or not communicate. There have been a lot of ways that we have been conditioned how not to communicate. And that's part of this strength wrestling. And so like part of this revelation that this guy is bringing through is along the lines of like, what have you been taught not to communicate? And how does that conditioning operate within you? With the Two of Wands here being about planning to move through a door, planning to cross a threshold. And that Five of Cups is really a fixation on the sins of the past, the pain of the past, the hurts of the past, the deceptions of the past, the wounds of the past, the lack of the past, the unfinished business of the past. Like there's a whole underworld of stuff that gets wrapped up in when you haven't been able to arrive, when you've never been able to like reach the destination. Your only reference point become, you get kind of trapped in this place where all reference to the living is in the past, and there's not a lot of living happening in the present because you haven't really like arrived, and you're sort of living a somehow like Groundhog Day experience in one way or another, and there doesn't seem to be a choice about it. And so part of what that Fool card is in the way of a sentinel is the Groundhog Day movie. If you've never seen it, it's living the same day over and over and over again. And that's also keeping you with the underworld, keeping you with the past in one way or another. And so with this Strength card, the Two of Coins, and the Five of Pentacles, this is also keeping you depleted. And so the strategy of this sentinel that keeps you from that tree of knowledge of the divine, and again, all of these sentinels represent a diminishing or a tricking you out of your own worth, your own inheritance, what you really truly are, and the love that you really already have. And so when we have to sort of confront these false starts and these things that have come in opposition to our arrival, one of the first things that we have to do in order to overcome this is recognize that we need a plan for looking away from the past and all the messaging of the past and what the past represents, and sort of moving away from it. We do have an attachment to it here with the Six of Swords, the Devil, and the Queen of Pentacles. It's almost like you're the queen of the past. You're the queen of the underworld. There's an attachment here. We need to talk about it. With the Four of Wands and the Judgment card, again, like there needs to be a healing that takes place around this silence and around opening up these channels of communication that will like allow you to access that knowledge, that wisdom, that place, that position. And now, you know, this is such a hard reading because it's like how I'm getting everybody into this reading is by way of chapters. But I think that the chapters are going to help because let's talk a little bit about what it means to confront the obstacle of never being able to arrive. And we're going to pull this apart a little bit because that's kind of like planning to look away from the past does sort of entail sort of acknowledging where we sort of stand with these patterns of the present that are reorienting us to that place. And bringing that judgment is going to come from like actually wanting to make this change. So part of the revelation here is that you want to live, is that you want to do more than Groundhog Day, is that you want to have a better experiences. The learned helplessness of the sentinel, you know, that you've had to encounter in the way of this is the journey, this is the life, this is the survival call, has made you believe that the only life that exists is the life in the past. The only hopes that exist have hopes that have already passed by, and there aren't new hopes to take those places. And so let's go ahead and take a look at what it means to face some of this a little bit head on, because this deprivation of the present, there needs to be, again, there's the Two of Coins, which is about finding balance by making a choice. And there's the Judgment card here, which is like having a decision that, again, once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you decide it, you're not going to go back. You know, the Judgment card is really like when you've had it with that person and you're breaking up and you can never turn it around, like it can never be turned around. Like that's sort of this moment, you know, in terms of like your relationship to relating to life in a certain kind of way. Once you break up with that way of doing it, you're able to really step into what it means to free yourself. But the attachment here to this position of the past, let's take a look at why that's there and what that means, because that's kind of key to like getting to this place of healing. The Star card, the Beacon. There's an attachment to the past that is not just yeah, wow, that's interesting. For you with the High Priestess, again, there is like a two worlds thing here. Like this attachment makes some, yep, that makes some sense. Hanged Man though. So the Queen of Wands at the bottom of this deck and the Hanged Man at the bottom of this deck are very different energies. To overcome the Sentinel of the Fool, I can't get anywhere. You know what I mean? And like I should put this in reverse because like again, we're talking about something that is meant to block you from believing that being in that position of the Fool card is even possible. So that Hanged Man is this position of like the life that I live, the circumstances that I'm under, the way that things are set up, there's no hope for the future, all I can do is Groundhog Day, repeat the same day over and over again. It's the fault of the government, it's the fault of the parents, it's the fault. There's an endless list of like this energy is like literally designed, you know, to kind of keep you like in this position, planning to look away from the past. Now, when you are a 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old and you're living at home and your parents are poor and you know that like you're going to get out of the situation and you're going to do better by yourself, and you know they're stupid because they're in this situation, but you would never put yourself in the situation and you know how to get out of it, and like all of those things, like there's an invincibility, there's a Queen of Wands, it's an ignorance, you know, that puts you in that position of feeling like, you know, you would do such a better job, and you might do such a better job, you might have done such a better job, job. You might be doing such a better job. But when it comes to that Hanged Man of Groundhog Day, and that Queen of Wands of believing that you can set out on a path, that you have the passion, that you have that you're glowing, and that people are attracted to you, and that you have what it takes. That comes from ignorance to a certain extent when you're young, but at a certain age, you can alchemize and create that same experience of like vitality and hope and a belief in yourself and the fuel to get you there because of the passion that is igniting that fire that is leading you where you want to go. You can call that in, and you're called to call that in, because the revelation here about the Hanged Man, and I think the revelation writ large about this reading and this part of the reading, is that when we think about the quest that we're on, when we understand that like what we need to conquer in the way of that unconscious space is this learned helplessness around never really ever being supported enough to arrive. And with that Star card being about a beacon, and there's a lot to this. This is actually, we're going to pull some more cards on this because there's a lot to this. Like, the good news here is that with this Five of Pentacles, you're starting from this place of deprivation because you just have to get through the day. You just have to work that job. You just have to sort of find a way. You know what I mean? Like all of the stuff that you are doing in the way of trying to find balance with the forces that seem very much poised against you, and the place that leaves you in terms of the resources. With this High Priestess and this victory, your guides are basically saying like there is provision here. There's a provision here that you're not seeing. There's a provision here that you have access to. There's a provision here for the High Priestess on the bottom of the deck here, for the High Priestess here as she's sitting here with her cards in front of her. That victory comes in this form of like you want to communicate. There's a need to communicate. You're meant to communicate. The Fool card and that journey and that gobbed up communication and that research on what it would be to like allow yourself to be the messenger, because that research isn't like just book research, like what it means to participate with a dream, what it means to participate with a mode of communication, what it means to participate with a creative field in one way or another, like what it is to step into the position of being the witness, the messenger to your life, making meaning of your experiences so that they can be transformative, so that they can bring catharsis not just to you, but catharsis to others. That's sort of the calling here, and that's the victory that is in this transformation. So when we see this victory card here, and we see the High Priestess, and we see again this desire to communicate with that divination. That divination doesn't mean that you have to do divination in order to communicate. It means there is a desire. You have a desire to connect. You have a desire to communicate. You have a desire to have that communication be received in a loving, kind, appreciative way. You have that desire to be seen and understood. You have that desire to belong, and have that belonging include your expression, and having that expression be like valued, welcomed, and cared about and loved. That Star card speaks of going from a broken place to a place of elevation by way of healing. And your guides are coming to say, like, the way that you overcome this Fool card, and if you think about this as a life mission that isn't confined to, like, you have 20 years to, like, make yourself perfect, and then you have 10 years to make your life perfect, and then you have the rest of your life to, continue to uphold it and not let it change. Like, moving out of that Hanged Man position of, I just have to have the Groundhog Day. This is all that is available for me. There's deprivation here. I'm working with it, but it's like a wrestling match. Your guides are saying that, when you come into that place of planning to look away from the past, you look away from the past by making meaning of it. You make meaning of it by attending to it, looking at it by way of investigation and research, but from enough of a distance that you're not reliving the past over and over again. You're taming the past by actually working with it, by actually bringing it from a place of brokenness into a place of elevated wisdom. And so part of what it means to get to that tree of knowledge is to first allow for your pain to become the substance of stories that when you make meaning of them, you're no longer wrestling them, you're setting them free. And there's a lot to that. We're not going to just leave you there. The Wheel of Fortune and the Judgment card says, when it comes to your healing, there's a lot to be desired in terms of the motivation to want to be heard, to want to believe these changes can happen for you. Because the Groundhog Day, there's some sort of attachment to it. There's even a belief that it's the best that it gets. It's all that there is. There's not more than this. And you may be at a certain age where it's like, well, if it's any different, I'm too tired to change, you know. But your guides are basically saying, like, with this equilibrium here, like, this is an enslavement. And with the Queen of Coins, you know, enslaving the Queen of Coins means like enslaving your potential. And that's a lot of potential with the Queen of Coins position. That means you're already developed in terms of your communication style, your communication skills. But what needs to be honed, what needs to be tamed, what needs to actually even in some ways be edited. And like the reason that the word editing is coming through, like I'm not really sure, you know what I mean? But I think that there are a lot of writers that follow me. So this raw potential does need to come into an equilibrium. It does need some form in order to sort of like operate in your life in a certain kind of way. And to participate with that tree of knowledge is to also know that. And so let's look at this judgment around that healing that has to happen, because it is something to contend with, because once that healing happens, the wheel of fortune changes, it turns. Right now the Hangman is there's no progress. The Fool in reverse is there's no direction, progress, there's no progress. But we're planning to do when we look away from this attachment to the past. And there is such an attachment to the past. There's an attachment to a way of being from the past. And there's a lack of attachment to being right here, right now, with the place and the space and the you that you are. And so we have to think about what that means, because healing from that turns the wheel. It turns the wheel to fortune with that Queen of Pentacles underneath the equilibrium card there. Balance. The Orator, communication and confidence. So to overcome, you're never going to get there. You first, like, because I see this again as like when you're running up a wall, like parkour. You know, if you ever watch parkour, people run up a wall. In order to train to run up that wall, they first have to like deal with their instincts, which are like, you can't run up a wall. You know, with you, when it comes to confidence and communication, I feel like there's this feeling about like, you know, actually getting where you're going, actually succeeding, actually achieving attention, you know, having people paying attention to you, having people paying attention to what you're saying, having people participate in what it means to like appreciate that, you know, even like that there is this feeling that you run at this goal and then you stop yourself. You run at this goal and then you stop yourself. And so much of what it means for you to think about this goal, because I know that this goal and the reason that you feel like you haven't arrived is the trauma that you've suffered, the sickness that you've suffered, the ways in which you have been impacted by things that are beyond your control, and a feeling that you are still impacted beyond those things that you can't control, so much so that like where you are is where you are, the Hanged Man. But the communication and the confidence thing, you know, because communication is your way out of the position that you find yourself in, and because communication for you is also the ticket. You know, that energy of the messenger was very present, you know, and is very present in terms of what we're being told about this particular sentinel that needs to be overcome. That orator, that communication and that confidence, and it doesn't have to be in one particular way or another. You know, with the High Priestess here, she's talking in symbolic language, or she's silent, you know, and with this victory here being about, you know, not trying to tame the thing in a certain kind of way, to be presented in a certain kind of way, but instead allowing for this catharsis of release around communication. There is a feeling of like you go to run up the wall and you can't get there. You can't tell your whole story. You can't put it all out there. You can't make a plan. You can't sit down and edit it. You can only constantly just be channeling. The High Priestess channels. She channels the stuff out and then she can't work with it. You know, it's there and it's gone. You know, it's this thing of wonder. It's a thing of spirit. But part of what the High Priestess is she is a partner to the divine. She is in partnership with the divine energy that she's devoted to. She is in relationship. She gives birth to their interactions. And to overcome this Fool card that says, look, the past is where it's at and there's no plan forward because of all of these things that are in your way, is sort of not allowing you to really look at like, wait a minute, if the divine is my love, if being in relationship with the divine is the experience of being like the lover in one way or another, if that experience includes like authentic communication, which is simultaneously praise, If that praise then like is me making meaning to all of the things that have come against me so that I can tame them, so that I can make them pay for the sins against me by way of my healing and the catharsis that comes from that healing, that sets me free to in some way do the things that I want to do, arrive at the places that I want to arrive at, have that new start that I want to have. Yes, maybe this is a direct message and this is a direct story, but maybe it's a fixation on the past that once changed, because you make the meaning of it, you are released to then go start with something new. But ultimately, what has to happen here is you have to make meaning with words of those experiences in the past, if not just for yourself, for others, because those lessons are what you're going to take with you into the world to open those doors that you feel are otherwise closed for you. With this brawler, lack of empathy and confrontation and viewpoints and control, the storyteller, and the star there being a beacon. The star is a light in the darkness. Taking on a perspective here with the Queen of Wands that says I'm valuable. Like, Queen of Wands is the queen of glow up. She's the glowing one. You know, I always see her as just like sparkling and on stage with like a huge audience. Like, that's the sort of Queen of Wands. She's overcome every hardship. She has overcome, you know, every jealousy, every crappiness. She's been lifted up by way of her own might and her own passion and her own fight. She's a rags to riches kind of a queen. With this Four of Swords and this Judgment card, there's this part of you that has to say, like, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to fight for myself here. And I'm not going to stand up and I'm not going to fight for myself in the ways I've done it in the past. I'm not going to do that Strength card, exhausting myself. Five of Coins, we're not going to get anywhere with this. I just have to, another day. I'm just going to relive, you know, that Groundhog Day over and over and over and over again. This is different. This is, I'm going to heal, because I am in love with the divine, and I'm going to make meaning of these stories. I'm going to make meaning of these experiences, and I'm going to release them through that meaning into the world, either for myself or for others, but ultimately it's going to set me free. That's the game plan here. With lack of empathy and confrontation and viewpoints and control of the storyteller, you know, this is going to be that inner cricket, that inner critic. I've been calling the inner critic an inner cricket because it just, you know, it's in the room and it's making noise and it's criticizing you and like, where is it? And make it stop, but it seems to be nature. You know, this lack of empathy and this confrontation, you know, maybe there has not been an audience, and by audience, I mean like a loving person, a kind person who has been willing to take your hand and listen to you. Because when we talk about those gobbed up communication channels, and the need to sort of research or learn your way like out of those gobbed up communication channels into an acceptance of yourself as the messenger. First, you have to say, I'm the messenger. I have a message for, if it's just you and your ancestors, that's all you're here for. That's what you came to do. Once you're released of that, you're released of that. Once that catharsis is had, you transform. And so it's not so much about like the audience, like it's about thinking about like, if there hasn't been an ear that has listened to your voice, then finding that voice becomes very difficult, because if you've only experienced it in the dark, you don't know how your growth is. You don't know what that it means to speak. You don't know what it is to hear yourself if you haven't been, you know, someplace where there's people who will listen in one way or another. If you've been trapped in an echo chamber, that's silencing. And you haven't heard your voice outside of repeating those echoes. If you've been trapped, you know, unable to speak for all the reasons that we kind of talked about, you know, this is because there has been some confrontation, you know, some feeling like anything that you say, you're going to get hurt for exposing yourself. You're going to be judged if you authentically communicate. Yes, you will be judged if you authentically communicate. But the question of who you're communicating for makes all the difference in that situation, because this viewpoints in the control. You know, it's like, I don't want to communicate, no one's even listening, and if I say something, they're not going to care. We're not doing it for that reason. You're communicating to make meaning of your pain. You have to look at your pain with this Five of Cups, because you're fixating at stories about the pain that they roll over and they roll 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 and they roll. And as you're moving through the Groundhog Day, the stories kind of repeat, because there hasn't been an arrival. You haven't gotten to this next phase, this next place. You're stuck in the Hanged Man Groundhog Day. And the only thing that really exists that is alive, where your memories and things are alive, is in the past. And so how do you tame that? How do you make that stop? How do you make that record stop? You have to live in the present. How are you living in the present? You're living in the present by taking a detached view of the past. An intentional, detached view of the past, where you're saying that situation, that pattern, this hardship, this thing that haunts me, it happened for this reason. I was there and called to be in that situation for this lesson. This lesson has equaled this way of being in the world that I would not change, and I would not go back because I don't want to lose who I am, because I love who I am. You know, all the ways in which we make meaning by actually like attending to these things, bringing our presence to that pain, and then transforming that pain into something that we are able to free ourselves from by way of our viewpoint, by way of our perspective, which means we're bringing something else from somewhere else into that space to set that fixed perspective free. And that's what people do when they go to organized religion. They bring that meaning from that religion into that space of pain, and they achieve that catharsis. You're being called to bring meaning to this pain, that you are loved, that you are valued, that there is something that wants to create life with you, co-create life with you. Why? Because it's sharing life with you, because you're participating with life. The God that is life participates with you, wants to participate with you. But when you're only looking at the past and you're not paying attention to it, the underworld grows larger. And you grow closer to the underworld than you are to the God that is life, that is participating with the energy of life, which is participating with creation, which is creating, which is doing, which is experiencing, which is stepping out of that hanged man position. And so with this Four of Swords and this judgment that says, I'm going to live, you're choosing to live, and you're choosing to take that perspective of living into the past, to set the past free from, and it's a distance. You're not ruminating, you're not rehashing, you're not even reliving. You have a message about peace and hope and transformation that you're taking from the present into the past to set the past free. And that is the job of the messenger. And so when you step into that job of the messenger, when you step into that place of the messenger, you're now in a doing, you're now in an experiencing, you're now opening the doors to new perspectives and bringing new perspectives to old stories that take those old stories and transform them so that you can be in the present and communicate from that place of confidence, having had worked through that and brought that meaning forward. This is the movement with that Six of Swords, this enslaved to this perspective of the past, where you need to bring some level of, it's like once you make that decision here about this healing process with the Judgment card, then the wheel turns and you're participating with life. Once you're participating with life, you are confronting the established place you have with the underworld, and that you have with the Groundhog Day, and the attachment with Groundhog Day. The attachment in one way or another to not communicating, to being silent, to rotting even. And I really want to put a very large emphasis on, with this group and with this, like, communicating, like our guide, this guy that's with me, is like, I'm going to say something that's the revelation, and I need you to listen to me, and I need you to, like, there's this aspect of like, take my hand when I tell you this. Take my hand when I tell you this. Ungobbing those communication channels is not just about words and the throat chakra and communicating from the mind. When we speak about communication that is not happening for you in the way that it needs to, that is creating this deprivation, we're talking about the senses, all five of them. Communication through the sense of touch, communication through the sense of smell, communication through the sense of taste, communication through the sense of hearing, and communication through the voice. It's all the senses, and I'm missing things here, but I'm being told that communication is body language, and being in proximity to others who are reading your body language while you're reading theirs. You know, there's so much to what it means to show up for life and participate with the living and life, and being torn from that and placed in the past or placed in places that are not that is this place of deprivation. And that's where the resources become like, I don't have the resources, I'm stuck, this is all I have. But that perspective change in your mind, where you change your vantage point and you say, I'm in this co-creation with the divine. I am participating with the tree of knowledge when I go into this place of knowing that I am loved, knowing that I am valued, knowing that I am desired by life. To participate with life and to participate with this God of life is a very interesting journey, and there's a lot of fun to it. But that Six of Swords means almost like it's an addiction to hiding. It's like the choppy waters speak of chaos. And a lot of times we think of peace as an absence of stimulation when we need that stimulation to grow and to feel like we're alive. And so peace is not just the absence of stimulus. Peace is something else. And so I want to tackle this just a little bit so that we kind of have some progress here in terms of this revelation, because a lot of these moments where you're like, I want to live. Okay, what the hell does that even feel like? Because I'm subsisting. I'm subsisting and subsisting. I'm subsisting. It's dreaming. You're going to dream your way out of this fixation with the way that things are, and there's nothing that can be done with that. Because again, that's looking at the past in a way that it's drowning you. But if you're looking at this and saying, I'm on this wild journey, I'm with the divine, I have to pass, I have to overcome in this initiation, this sentinel, this blockage, whose name is, you're not going to get anywhere, so why even try? You have to confront that energy and say, I don't care what the past has said. I don't care what the messaging is. I don't care how long you have worked to build this learned helplessness within me. I know that I'm the Queen of Wands because I am loved by the divine, and I'm taking that knowledge with me into the process of dreaming and making meaning. And I am researching to find that meaning, and I am bringing it back to that point of pain, with bringing my presence to that point of pain, and I am administering that meaning, and I am setting that free, and I am doing it by looking away from the past as something that binds me, and looking at the past as something that is an opportunity to mine for the wisdom that comes when you bring meaning to those stories and those experiences. And so this is a participation with life, participation with the living, participation with information that then opens the doors to get those needs met, to get those different types of communication in order. And so it's a decision that you're making about being the Queen of Wands instead of this Hangman that says, I'm going to fight for my life. I'm going to fight for my life. That's that Four of Wands. And the revelation here is that's what turns the wheel, is that decision, that position, that viewpoint and perspective, instead of a perspective that says, I don't want to fight another day in my life. I'm tired. I'm done fighting. Because that may be real. But what this energy is coming in to say is, you came to this life to overcome each one of those sentinels. And either they are more powerful than you or you are more powerful than it. And it all happens in perspective. And so take on that perspective that says, I can fight this, maybe not physically. Maybe you are tired. Maybe you do have to be in a Groundhog Day position every day. But bring all of the faculties of vision, imagination, prayer into these moments. Again, making meaning of whatever it is that is keeping you from feeling like you have any options. Because that victory in the High Priestess says that when you can communicate, when that communication is positioned in the right way, you'll be free. You will have overcome this particular sentinel and gotten that much closer to the divine. And so let's take a look at this, because I don't want to go too long. I'm bad at that with peace here. First, recognizing that peace is not the absence of stimulation. That's trying to induce a numb state over and over and over again. And that numb state is not helping you rest. The numb state is not bringing rest. What you need in the way of rest is sun, is the sunshine. And a change. And actually maybe even a physical change with this shock here. And so there's something that your guides are saying might be beneficial in terms of shocking your system into a change. Because there is, again, that devil is an addiction to a feeling state. And I keep on picking it up as almost like a numb state. And it's like where the Queen of Wands is like, I don't want to encounter anything because I'm not going to go through that ever again. But your guides kind of want to bring you back into this knowledge that like that position will set you free. Like when you are able to say, I don't want to be stuck. I want to, if I have to dream and pray my way out of this, I can dream and pray my way out of this by searching the world for meaning to bring to the situations that I'm in that make me feel like the past has to repeat itself over and over again. What can I create into the space that I'm in that will release me from it? And that's another way of bringing meaning to the pain that you find yourself in. And also bringing allies spiritually. We have the power to bring allies into these points of pain. It's just about that perspective as being not I'm in it and I'm swallowed by it and there's nothing I can do, but that perspective being I'm at a distance, I am bringing meaning, I'm bringing my spiritual allies, I'm attending to this as something that needs to be healed and released, and instead of something that is an inevitable stuck place of being. Again, it's a perspective shift. And so your guides are saying, when you think about what peace is being alive. Like what brings you peace? A lot of people will be like, it's financial stability, it's job security, it's a partnership that is supportive. Those are all things outside of yourself. And we do need those things. Those things are very, very important. But what it means to, again, we're participating from a new perspective that allows for this change to take place by way of our own judgment on what it means to heal. And what it means to heal is not staying away from all stimulation just because it's the closest thing to peace. Stepping into this, I am this unique expression of the divine. The life that I have led is of value with that Queen of Wands. It is meant to be transformed into something that is of value to the world. You step into your own sense of your own value, and then you fight in order to give that value its place. And you are the warrior in that story, and you bring that story of the warrior into you invoke the warrior for that purpose. And with the witch, you're using whatever is around you, whatever you have at your disposal, even the stuff that is like way out there. Like a lot of the times we are gifted in niche ways. Niche, like a niche gift is something that's out there. And in order to step into the power of what it means to hold it, you first have to accept the position that it is, that your gift is parked at. And it might be a counterculture position, but acceptance as a Queen of Wands, that it's not acceptance, I guess I have to do this and I'm a little bit ashamed of it. It's acceptance and I love who I am. And that is the meaning that I have brought to these experiences of alienation, is that I love the uniqueness that I bring and the unique perspective that I bring. And that lifeblood, again, that's like this approval, that's the self-love. And that's the stuff that you have a lot of control over. But it's not just control over, and it's not just something that you have to be alone with. This is what a spiritual practice is all about, is inviting your ascended ancestors and your ascended guides, inviting in whatever deity that you work with that you feel comfortable with, bringing them meaning through those spiritual principles and those spiritual practices. These are all tools that you're meant to step into in order to overcome that sentinel that says no matter what you do, you're not going to get there. Because maybe the reason that you didn't get where you were going because it wasn't for you. And so stepping into that unique expression, working with the areas of shame or the areas of fear, being an artist and saying you can't make money as an artist. Well, what does it mean to begin to work or with, like, you guys are saying, like, this is the crucial point of perspective. Authentic expression is praise. I'm just going to praise. I'm going to bring praise into my day. I'm going to bring praise into my life. And I'm going to express that which I am given to work with as like my authentic expression, which might be doing hard math problems. But it has a place of belonging somewhere. And by participating with those things, you open the door for those places of belonging to find you and for you to find them. And so, like, this is what the message is all about in terms of the messenger, is that baked into your pain, baked into your uniqueness is the answer to your belonging. And with this nurture, you're meant to nurture yourself, nurture your gifts, nurture your relationship with the divine. The divine made you in a certain way, with these certain gifts, with these certain outlooks. You have these experiences. You can bring those divine wisdom into those experiences and into those areas of giftedness that will then transform your circumstance by way of opening doors in relationship to what you are doing, participating, experiencing, living, operating through. And it's not a perfect process, but it is a holy process. And if you go at it looking for validation and attention from people, that's going to make it very hard to do this. But if you go into it and say, this is praise, and it's praise and co-creation with the authentic, parts of me that express in this very specific way, and it's not for everybody, but it is for my belonging. It is for where I belong. And by expressing in this way, in my giftedness, in co-creation with the divine, I unlock this door and I'm able to arrive where I'm meant to go. And it's praise. It's not a mandate. And with this bottom end of the deck energy being about anxiety, you know, that's sort of like, ooh, the stone just fell. You know, the anxiety is like, am I ever going to get there? I don't know if I'm going to get there. Am I going to get there? I don't know. When you tell yourself the story, absolutely, I'm getting there. I'm going to get there no matter what. That's the Queen of Wands energy. It's not a question of how I'm going to get there, what time I'm going to get there, you know, am I supported in getting there? I am going to get there. You make that decision and you nurture your way forward. You make the decision that you're going to get there and then you nurture your way forward. And sometimes that nurturing means eating a healthy breakfast and getting up early. Sometimes that, you know, in order to get where you're going with the communication, because the communication isn't just words. The communication is a communication with life and experiencing a life. And so nurturing your way forward towards that is creating situations, co-creating with the universe into the situation that you find yourself in, towards facilitating and like a place for your expression. You nurture your way toward that goal. Am I going to get there? 100% yes, you are. How are you going to get there? You're going to nurture your way toward that goal. How are you going to know how to do that? You're going to co-create with the divine. You're going to go and investigate. You're going to research. You're going to find ways to take the best possible care of yourself so that you can bring the messages that you have lived through, that you can bring that witness, that divine witness, into the world through the skills that you have honed that make you unique. And by expressing those skills authentically, you're having praise, and that praise reaches where you belong. And so that is how you confront the sentinel of you're never going to get anywhere. It's Groundhog Day. So pile number one, we're gonna start by working on this. Again, I encourage you to take these piles one at a time. We have two cards here because the mystery and the strength. Yeah, with this anxiety card being about, you know, how am I going to get there? What is it going to mean? I am going to get there. You're deciding. You're placing that faith with the leap of faith. You know, you're placing this card upright. How are you going to get there? It's not by any other method than by faith. That's why the sentinel that is blocking you from arriving at that authentic expression and that place of belonging that is built into what it means to express from that place. What is blocking you from ever arriving there is the lack of faith. So the revelation here with the Fool card, the Fool card sets out in a new direction and does so by way of faith, not by sight, by way of faith. And so when you say, I'm going to get there, it's by way of faith. And so to overcome the sentinel that says you're not going to get there is by using the technology of faith, by using faith and saying, I have faith that I'm going to get there. It may be a mystery, but I have faith that I am going to get there because the strength that has carried me this far and that has brought me to this message and that is helping me unlock this mystery, that is co-creating with me, wants to be in relationship with me, created me for this expression and has a place where I belong. And I'm going to nurture my way toward it. And it is going to be work, but it is going to be work where I'm not alone, where there's a goal that I'm excited about that brings that Queen of Wands energy back into my experience, that I will get where I'm going, and that anxiety can be dissuaded somewhat with that decision because it's uncertainty that gives you that feeling of maybe I'll get there, maybe I won't, I don't know, blah, you know, what if I can't get there fast enough? How can I get there? What if, and this mystery is I don't know how I'm going to get there, but I have the faith, and that faith is a strength that will ensure my arrival. Okay, pile number one, that is our reading. I hope that helped you. Take some time to digest it, work with some of these concepts, and and those of you that are doing this chapter style, we're gonna go into pile number two. Okay, pile number two, this is the twin kitties. And with the Emperor, actually, I was gonna say Emperor, it's actually the Hierophant. And this is an interesting card. The way that this came up, and again, I'm referencing these like cue cards only because I did a reading before this that gave birth to this reading, and so this is kind of weirdly sort of like continuation. And in that reading, you know, the Hierophant was with this notion of like deception, and so the sentinel that keeps you from that tree, you know, that tree of like, you know, divine connection, a lot of it is going to be the dogma that you either are under the tyranny of or the dogma that you have walked away from, but you live in defense of it. So it's either there because you're under the tyranny of it because you believe it, or you're under the tyranny of being in defense of it. or living and mentally in defense of it. So there's still an operating system at play there that has to be overcome in order for you to sort of access that garden, that tree of knowledge. So let's get some cards. Let's take a look and see where this is going to let us into this reading with. Let me just get centered. Taking some deep breaths. So this is kind of a hard one because, we're talking about so many layers of indoctrination. We're going to get into it, like the indoctrination of the stuff that we're brought up with in the home, like the country, patriarchy, the country, all the stuff that we are force fed to believe as like the way that it is, and then we find out it's different. Even like something like Santa Claus. Hiding your true self and projection, and the pathless, difficult decisions, lack of direction. The pilgrim is opportunities and growth, sure-footedness and predestination, hiding your true self and projection, and difficult decisions, lack of direction. So when it comes to like this particular sentinel, this threshold, this initiation, like what it means to overcome this obstacle that's in the way, the revelation on like what it is and how we get through it. One of the first things that we want to understand, I want to get some more. I want to get some of these too. Which ones? Let's look at these ones. I actually have to get more. Because it's basically, I'm getting the information that like the way that this sentinel operates to defeat you, and there's always a strategy because there's always a way in which it happens, is to make it so that you can't find, that you don't mature enough, that you don't know yourself enough, that you are so held by the rules that the experience of what it is to be you, like absent those rules, just can't be even conceived of. You can't even conceive of who are you without the status, who are you without the this or that, like who are you without the things that like identify you from within or without to a certain extent. And so this energy is saying, it's like there to keep you from really seeing who you really are and what your real path is. That all of these structures are designed to keep you from the path. With opportunities and growth being that path, with the pilgrim and that light as a guiding, like a guiding force, and that sure-footedness and that predestination being like you do belong someplace. There is someplace for you. There is a journey that you're meant to be on. There is a life that you're meant to be having, and it is an experience absent how it is evaluated against the rules of like, whether you're in or you're out of some code of conduct. Hiding your true self and projection is like where people park themselves and their life, and they end up with like living the same day over and over again, and they stop being able to grow, and they stop being on a journey, and they're following all the rules, and they're following all the rules, and they become the rules, and the rules are them, and then they're hiding their true self, and they're just projecting in defense of, in one way or another. And so that keeps you from knowing yourself, and knowing yourself is the path. And so let's take a look and see what we're going to get in terms of like, how do you deal with this? Like, how do you not be somehow in the operating system of in defense of or in obedience to the codes that you have been, because like, it's like coding, and values are similar. And there's true values that are like inherent to like human gnosis, like love and justice, and then there are false values like wealth. You know what I mean? Like and like I don't know. There's this way in which we have to be able to distinction. This guide is saying that this life is about making a distinction between what is counterfeit and what is real, and time after time after time, almost like all day long, you're making decisions, real, counterfeit, and you're developing your discernment in that way. And that's not a judgment like where we have like good or evil. That's just like, this is something that is trying to be something, it's mimicking something, it's the masquerade of something, it's the mask of something, and this is the real thing. And then resonant doesn't resonate, And so with this Hierophant being about like this structure that either eats you into itself and you become, the machine spits you out as itself, or you're on a completely different journey towards finding yourself. And so like one of the first things that you have to understand is like, it's not really an escape so much as it's like a labyrinth that you move through. I mean, there is an escape, but like this particular sentinel, you can't get around. You kind of have to go through, because this is going to imprint on you, and then you have to remove those guardrails manually with your own hands. Queen of Wands, Eight of Wands, King of Wands, and the Ace of Swords, with the bottom of the deck being the Fool. Now, the last pile, the last chapter, dealt with this concept of the Fool. And that Sentinel was the Fool card in like as a Fool card as represented by a obstacle. And that Fool card represented by that obstacle is you can't get where you're going. There are things in your way. You're stuck where you are. This particular energy sets a lot of those rules, you know? And so these things are connected. So like once you're able to determine, yes, I can get where I want to go, and that means even deciding where I want to go, and I'm going to have to re-engage with desire, fire, in order to do that. Once you've reignited that fire into that Queen of Wands position and taken that leap of faith, and faith is a substance, but it's also, it's a fire element. And so like once that fire of faith is ignited under this like new direction, you're going to encounter the indoctrination and the rules of conduct of the game that you are in. And that's the role and the path of the warrior. And so when you encounter this sentinel, this initiation, this threshold of the Hierophant, which is going to be the dogma within, the dogma without, the indoctrination, the in defense of, what side are you on, and you're still on the game. To find a path out of that is to first become the warrior. And so that last reading, pile number 1, if you entered there, if you didn't enter there, that's fine. This is where you're working from. But I do think a lot of these are connected for a lot of people. First, you identify that you have that fire, that leap of faith. You step into the Queen of Wands position. You step out of the Hanged Man. The Hanged Man is, I am convicted by the circumstances of the shit that I was dealt, and I can't go anywhere because this is where I am. When you move from that point to that Queen of Wands, I am getting where I'm going. Why? Faith. Where am I going? I desire it. Those things established, now you move into this position of having to actually engage with the fight against the Hierophant in one way or another. These are going to be your death of God moments. Like, I believed all of these things, and I did all these things, and I got all these ways, and then nothing happened because I wasn't rewarded for my hard work. I wasn't rewarded for my obedience. I was told that I would be rewarded for my obedience, and if I'm not, like, what's going on? There is no God. You know, that's going to be your entrance. That's going to be your door. That's when you encounter this sentinel who says there is a God, and it's against you. And you're gonna have to follow these rules and project that everything is fine, so that you can get somewhere with the system that I have designed to keep you from yourself, to keep you pathless, to keep you my path, to absorb you into myself, to spit you out as who I think you should be. And instead you say, no, I am the mother of fire. I am the Queen of Wands, and I'm going to be who I am. I'm going to express authentically, which is praise. Now, to have praise, you have to know where that praise is going. You have to know where that praise is going. That's part of the magic and the mystery of falling in love with the divine and actually accessing that tree, the tree of knowledge that operates as that divine place. That's your lover also. From a spiritual standpoint, the lover of your soul, the creator, the created. And when you think about this in those terms, and you ignite that fire, you know, that says like, I already know that I'm taking this leap of faith, and that I'm deciding that I am going to excel, and I'm going to achieve, and I'm going to get the credit that I deserve, and I'm going to do it by nurturing the process. That interference that's going to come up is the life that you have to live within this structure. So let's get some cards on that to begin our exploration into what it means for you to overcome the obstacle of the oppressor, of the structure, of that imprint. You know, it's an internal imprint. It says, I am God, instead of there is a God. This imprint and this moment of truth, when we think about real and counterfeit, this energy says, I am God. You have to go to work every day. You've got no hope. That's what that energy of that shadow aspect is. Is the structure is God. The light aspect is, no, there's really a God, and it's that it represented by that tree and that forbidden knowledge to create new life with. And so with this Mother of Fire saying, I am going to authentically praise, communicate, heal for that experience with that loves my soul. And I'm going to step into the magic of that. And I'm going to step into the belief. I'm going to step into the faith of that. And then the interference says, no, you're not. You're going to be tired. You're going to have to work really hard and you're not enough, right? So let's start there with the cards that we're getting out. Is that moment of like, what does it mean to encounter this initiation? What is this plan? What is the game plan with this energy? How are they trying to get you? What does it mean to overcome that? How do you find that path? How do you find yourself in this process? As you step into the role of the warrior, you invoke the energy of the warrior. You say, warrior, divine energy that is warrior, stand with me in battle for my life so that I can participate in life in the way that I am designed to, and pave that path with and for me as we move together. That's faith. That's a prayer. It's a technology of faith. And so with this Six of Wands, being about victory, and with that Eight of Swords being about trapped, and this Strength card being about taming something, to find this path and to find yourself, to step into that role of a warrior, you're doing it. That's the magic. You make a decision, though. When you call those energies in, it's because you decided. That's what you're doing. And then when they're living with you and through you and having fiery experiences, because you are invoking that fire so that you can live. I've got fire sounds playing in the background because I'm working with that energy right now. Well, actually, it's funny because this is a really interesting, this reading came in with like an elemental energy of earth, and now it's very much in this elemental energy of fire. So especially with the fire that I put on unconsciously without thinking about it. So this is definitely when you have to call in the element of fire. We're here on this earth in the material world to learn how to participate with the elements. And when we had the element of that first reading, it was going to be, but it's interesting, these are all definitely linked. Pile number 1 is going to be the element of earth. Pile number 2 is going to be the element of fire. This is part of our revelation, is that we're discovering that we are meant to work with all of the elements. They are our teachers, and they are our parents, and they love us, and we need to call them in, and we need to participate with them. And that's what it is to communicate with our bodies and our mother. And so when we need to call in this fire energy, when we need to step into this fire energy, it's because there is this interference. And you've got you've got the King of Wands and the Queen of Wands over here. You've got balance of these energies, aimed at what it means to not just have to squash and suppress all of this interference in order to like get through another hour, get through another day. We're not moving toward a numb state. We are allowing ourselves to stay in a place of like, it's like there's stimulation, which is life, you know? And so with this Eight of Swords being about, this is trapped. Now, this is mental anguish. Eight of Swords, it's also, you can't get out of your own way. And you can't get out of your way because you can't think your way out of it. And it's very similar to having to get from point A to point B, but not having a map, there not being public transit, you're needing an amount of money that you don't have. That's what Eight of Swords is. There's a path, there is a method, it's there. You can't see it. Because the way that you would normally get from point A to point B, given the options that you have, it's not going to happen. And so like when you find yourself in that situation, and if you look at this card, you can kind of see how she has to untangle herself and this aspect of herself that is holding to all of these swords of information that say, no, you can't go. That's the Hierophant. No, that's not you. No, they won't like you. No, it does, it does no good. You have to do this. This is we agree, This is a process of deconstruction, partially. This is a process of releasing yourself from rules that I'm like, does it make sense? Does it not make sense? Is it in love or is it in control? What is the spirit that I'm coming at with this? What is the message that I'm adopting? That's what this Eight of Swords is all about. What is the message that I am adopting? What is the message that I'm holding? What is the message that I'm believing? And what is the message that is keeping me where I am and not able to move? Because there's another message. I'm just going to have some water. You know, a good example of what another message would be. You have to get from point A to point B. You're in a town where there's no public transportation, and you don't have the money to pay a cab to take you. You know that there's another option, but in the Eight of Swords says there's nothing. You're trapped. You're doomed. But that other option, this Eight of Swords predicament with that leap of faith says, I'm going to get there. I believe I'm going to get there. I believe I'm going to arrive. I have faith. The fire is lit. The inspiration is being called in. That inspiration, as it's called in, as you call it in through prayer, as you call it in through ritual, as that arrives for you, it whispers to you and it says, you know, the neighbor that you have been weeding her garden and helping her bring in her groceries for the last 2 years, she's a car, and you've been really helpful towards her, and you can ask her for a favor. It's something that you are told that makes you shamed. It's something it's anxiety, but that is an option. There is a way, and maybe you can give her gas money and maybe even a little something else. Maybe there's a way for compromise. That's the inspiration that comes in. Suddenly, there's a way. And it may not be a way that you think you can participate in or blah, blah. That's the Eight of Swords problem. As you're talking yourself out of the way forward. And so with this Six of Wands being about victory and that fire, you know, participating with life, participating with experiencing life, participating with solving problems through calling and inspiration when you don't see the way forward in an easy way. Dealing with this interference that pops up to say, like, there's not a way forward, tough crap, and saying, wait a minute, interference. I know that this interference is here to remind me of my helplessness, but I've already taken this flame of faith and said that the divine will inspire me, and I'm waiting and participating with life, and I am dreaming my way and nurturing my way toward a goal with the faith that this is going to work out okay as I participate. That's what this predestination is all about. And this is also where our faith gets parked. I am meant to bring these messages through the experiences that I've had. I'm meant to bring this deliverance through the life that I've chosen to overcome, in some senses. And so with that, hiding your true self, and like, what does it mean to really come into yourself? Because that's the fire. The fire is passionate. How do you get that passion? Because that's the Six of Wands. The Six of Wands is the passionate, like, victory, you know? And if you haven't experienced a lot of victory, that's what we're sort of talking about in terms of, like, coming up against the Hierophant is often coming up against the dominant beliefs. It's external and it's internal. So you have defenses against it that are like unconscious defenses. Like, you know, you're not going to like listen to somebody talk about, you know, I don't know. There's so many ways in which we could spin this. Your guides are showing me like endless circles of defenses that keep you from this path that are built into the Hierophant structure. It's fear-based. It's fear-based matrix structure. And so let's go ahead and get some cards. Let's go ahead and get some cards and see where we're going with this, because the Strength card on the bottom of the deck says, like, this is a process of wrestling an angel, wrestling a god, because that Hierophant stands as a god. It always stands for a god. And either it's a god that says, you have no power and I am cruel and you are subjected to this, just have faith, there's heaven, you know, or, you know, it's a structure that says, these are the codes of conduct, and if you fall outside of our agreed upon normal, then you are exiled and shamed. You know, like, there's so many ways in which this is a structure for sameness that is devoid nuance, but nuance is reality. Complexity is reality. Simplified is not. And so order is kind of like, you know, order being Hierophant is a little bit at odds with reality. And when you're able to sort of begin to chip away at the truth of what the doctrine, of what the agreement, of what the belief, of what the repeated thing is, and continue to be in this fireplace of I am passionate about expressing my praise to the divine, and that it's a creative thing. And that's where you find your path. So, you know, this work with overcoming this particular sentinel is not taking that map that they're giving you and finding your path. Because the map says this is the only way. This is the only thing available to you. The way that you're going to get your needs met is if you're in agreement on all of these things, and then you can join. That's the map. But when you don't take the map, you go into the wilderness. Because the map is there to keep you from finding your path. Because that map is not your path. And so all the maps that you're given is not your path. The map that you're not given is your path. The map that is written in your heart is your path. The map that is written through your participation with the divine and receiving inspiration and communication, that's your path. And so it's like learning how to find your way forward from a different method than the one you've been given. And so we do that as a warrior. We step into that place. We use that energy. We need fire for that. And so let's go and see what we can do about, because this Ace of Air is about truth, finding truth. This Hierophant presents as a deceiver, as a liar, lying to you and lying to others. That person doesn't square up. You know what I mean? Like that person doesn't follow the rules like I follow the rules. They follow different rules. They have a different experience. You know, there's a lot of toiling here, a lot of work here, a lot of comparison here. And so that interference comes in the structure. The structure is a structure that so when we take the truth and we apply it to the reality of what the structure is telling you, we are able to like undo the bindings of the deceiver within ourselves, and then in participating in the world in a new way outside of ourselves as well. It's a challenge, but when you bring truth, and this energy that we're working with is saying, you know, when it comes to this sentinel, when it comes to that battle of faith from the previous pile, and faith is not a belief system that belongs to one group. It's a technology of faith that belongs to anybody who's participating in it. So when we talk about bringing that faith, that fire, that belief, I'm going to get there, that belief, I'm going to overcome, that belief, this isn't going to get me down, that belief, I am who I am, and who I am, and when I express who I am, that authentic praise is for the God that created me, the goddess that created me, and the story we're telling together as we bring meaning to this circumstance that I find myself in. Bringing that fire of divine interaction into the process of divine interaction, bringing that truth to a system that says it's an exchange, and that obedience is love. This card, 8 of Coins, obedience is love. Compliance is love. Compliance is reward. Non-compliance is punishment. Not who you are, not the path you're meant to take. My path. My version of you. That's this system, this order, imposed upon everyone, imposed upon you, keeping you from your path. So how you find that path is you find your truth, and you find the truth. And that's a counterfeit real. And so in some ways, this is a very painful process, and it does create a distance between you and others. But that fire, that passion that you're bringing to this, that faith that you're bringing to this, it's about finding the way out. And you have to go through, which means you have to encounter these lies. And you have to encounter what it means when others believe these lies about you. You have to untangle them from you. The Tower card here. You know, these structures are what you're built on. These structures make up the foundation that you came in, that you formed into as you bursted into life. You know, they informed you on every single level. But it's a tower that's not holding. It's a truth that's not holding. And it can't. It's not really meant to. You're meant to have this moment with the Hierophant and this initiation with this sentinel that keeps you from the divine and your divine self. And that knowledge is to find the truth in your path. The confusion with the 7 of Cups and the Fool card again speak to this faith that says you may not see, without the foundation you are given, without the structure that you are given, without the map that you know how to make sense of, that labyrinth becomes something where you have to just kind of work with the faith aspect. You don't know exactly where you're being led. You don't know what it means to be on the path that you're on. You're listening to different aspects of your senses. You're connecting with different aspects of yourself. Your psychic senses are coming online because you're no longer following that map. Your ability to perceive, your ability to communicate with the divine. This is leading you towards that tree of knowledge. But first you have to be willing to be brave and be willing to be the warrior and be willing to think of this as the fight for your life that you are guided through. The fight for your life is in the act of being guided through a labyrinth of confusing information about what it means to survive a structure that tells you there's only one way. Especially when you're trying to express yourself. So that's expression of your truth with this Fool. You're looking at your options. You're on an investigation with that Fool card, and you're looking at your options, and you're thinking about all of the who's its and was its and zoozles. And I'm brought to the mermaid, the Little Mermaid story, you know, when she's looking at the fork and she's, you know, this is calling me. I don't know why it's calling me, but I'm going to follow that lead, that fire that is bringing me into contact with that other world that I want to touch, that I want to be a part of. And yes, her voice will be lost for a period of time, because that's what it is to interact between dimensions, is to have different rules suddenly show up that you're now playing by. And by different dimensions, I mean like different like ceilings that you're breaking through, new environments that you have to get used to, with new rules that you have to be able to adapt to and around, instead of letting them crush you. The Hierophant. See, if you don't play by the rules, you get crushed and eaten alive. Or you learn a really hard lesson that takes a long time to undo about self-love and wanting that voice and needing that voice and having that voice be more important than any star-spangled relationship. And so when we kind of begin to confront the truth through experience and be led through this labyrinth as the warrior, willing to encounter that we don't know what's going to come against us. We don't know what the journey is going to even show us, because we know we are going to have to encounter conflict. And we have to have a different attitude about encountering conflict, because we can't lay down in the labyrinth and hide in the corner hoping not to be seen. That's that Nine of Wands. Being so between two worlds. You can't comply, but you're also complying. You know, you're in the labyrinth and you're playing by the rules of the walls that hold you in. But at the same time, if you try to go somewhere, you're not going the direction that you want. That's that Nine of Wands. You're just weary. And every single battle that you have tried to fight and lost, you are carrying with you as some sort of a referendum of where you're meant to go. This is the God, is all of this, right? And so when you sort of bring the truth, when you apply that truth that says, like, I am not those things, I am not this way, I'm allowed to exist in this way, you bring a generosity to your own daily experience, a generosity of perspective to your daily experience, an acceptance to your daily experience that says, I am really unique. And I have a unique set of skills. I have a unique set of opportunities. I have a unique set of options. Everything that is before me, I call this fire, this inspiration. What am I going to receive in the way of this inspiration? What does it mean to be ready for that generosity? What does it mean to participate with that generosity? It's action-based. It's strategy-based. Queen of Wands, King of Wands, fire is about keeping keeping yourself alive with inspiration, is what this ends up being, and being driven with that inspiration into encounters with truth that you then hold and create a path with. And it means participating with this authenticity, participating. Like, you have to fight yourself and the indoctrination inside of yourself that says this is the only way. You have to figure out what you love enough to fight for. What do you love enough to fight for in relationship to yourself? Because when you're young, it comes a little easier. You're instructed, you're given. You love romantic love enough to fight for it, and then you find yourself in some like horrible situation, you know? You love that job and the image and the status that it gives you, and then you find yourself imprisoned by it. Because you're given those things, and they are meant to be traps, because you're meant to encounter this sentinel of the Hierophant that says you are me and you are mine, instead of you are you and this is your other path. You're meant to encounter this and have this initiation and have this moment of, that is not God. I see a counterfeit. I'm going to move towards what is real. I'm going to move towards participating with something that is alive instead of a story that is dead. And in doing so, and in identifying what you love and what it means to receive that inspiration, to receive that divine genius, to move into your participating with your magic by way of creation, creativity, a form of communication with the divine, authentic expression, praise, participation with the divine, knowing each other, knowing the divine and the divine knowing you through your authentic regard. I mean, all of these is like, bringing in the faith aspect really heavy, but that's the fire and keeping it going. And that's that element of truth that creates a path forward with this Nine of Pentacles that reestablishes you after that tower of that old structure is not going to hold. And I know it. And I have to face that. And I can't run away from it. I have to mature. And I have to step into a place of the warrior. And I have to fight really, really, really hard for what I love for myself. And it's going to happen. And that's the faith aspect. And that's taking that leap of faith in the new direction is not just, packing up the car. It's deciding to have a different perspective. And I'm going to cough 1 second. Wow, my throat chakra is like really tight. And I think that's because like with this Queen of Pentacles being about position and this Two of Cups being about being received. So much of this entire, all of these sentinels, all of these obstacles represent ways in which you can be talked out of any sense that you are loved and that you are cared for and that you are divine and that all of those things work together. Feeling like you'll never be received or you can't be received is one of the biggest lies that this energy tells. Because it says you can only be received by my standards. When the truth is you are received by your authentic expression, and those that are in harmony with you will recognize that song. And that's how you find your belonging. Your belonging is not like, your belonging is ecosystem related. It's giftedness related. You find your place and that belonging by participating with what you are, by knowing what you are, by finding that path that is yours, by listening to a different truth, a different place of instruction that isn't what you're given, that is a false God, but is a relationship with what is true God, which is what created you, which is what you create with when you are acting with life. It's a spiritual practice, this type of creativity, this type of living, but it will establish you. And that's not prosperity gospel so much. It is like, if you find your path because you're operating in your giftedness, like you're going to get where you're going faster. And it's going to make more sense, and life is going to have that meaning that you made if you were in pile number 1, or if you started in pile number 2, maybe you already know how to make meaning and apply it to the circumstances in your life and set yourself free from those things and allow yourself to travel with those lessons into an active choice, of like victory. Maybe you're already there. But if you're not, and you're in this moment of like taking on that faith that says, I'm going to get where I'm going, and then encountering the interference over like, do you know where you're going? Because you've been informed where you're going. And that's the doctrine from within rising up. And then you're like, do I really want this, or do I just want to be safe? And then you need the divine. And then you reach for the divine in that prayer. And that's that inspiration. And that's that fire. I want for myself this other thing. And the generosity of inspiration comes through because you're built for it, because you're gifted for it. And that's that predestination. And so that truth of who you are is the path. And that's the revelation. If you're wondering, how do I get there? Where am I going? The truth of who you are and what it means to be in that process of discovery with that passion and that fire and that love and that belief in the love and that belief that there's a place and that belief that you are worthy and that belief that you are designed for something and it's designed for you. Like, that's faith. But again, we're using that. We're stepping into that. And if you've been hurt by faith, you can be like, oh my God, I can't handle it because I don't believe in what it means to be received. I've never been received. But the 10 of Coins, does speak to a legacy of energies that are around you and within you that are doing something that's probably beyond you. And it's almost a place of pride to say that you can never have what you want. And there's so much wisdom to looking at some of that stuff and just saying there's some wisdom in it. And so let's leave this here because, you know, the revelation in this point, you know, in this place. And I get that some of you are saddled with stories that make the dream of happily ever after like completely not it. And I'm going to tell you that the dream of happily ever after came from the structure, and it is the assigned dream from the structure. It's what the structure says gives you value. It's what the structure says will give you approval. It's what the structure says is going to set you up in a way that is secure and that is held in high regard. What you really want and what you are built for, and that process of discovery, that path, it's also a path. Might not be, you have to untangle, you have to confront, you have to be in the labyrinth and say, nope, that's not the way. Nope, I can't do that. I can't do that either. But there's something that I can do. And I need to communicate with the divine. That's that fire, calling in that fire, calling in that inspiration. What do I love enough to fight for? Because that's a spell worth doing. That's a spell worth doing. Because that'll get you out of this 8 of Swords position and into this place of victory with the 6 of Swords. And you have to try things out. You know, you're operating on faith. You're nurturing your way toward the goal, but it does require you to know what you want. So let's just get a couple more cards on what it means for you to know what you want, because that's the truth that you're working your way towards. So you have to untangle yourself, like brick by brick, from that Hierophant truth by encountering it and saying, nope, that's not me. Nope, not that. And that can be so discouraging, but this invites you to not be discouraged by it, to call in the divine and not do this process on your own, because you don't have to. It's a belief that the divine cares. It's a belief that the divine wants you to be where you're created to be. It's a belief that you were created to be anywhere. And if you can't stomach a belief that you were created to be anywhere, that's okay. You don't have to. But that is the technology of faith, the placebo effect, belief in the story that creates the opportunity and the outcome. That's what we're looking at when we kind of examine these things and we pull from the rubble that which is true, that which is right, that which is applicable. You know, and so let's go ahead and take a look here in terms of like what it means for you to find what it is that you're going to love enough to fight for, because that is a precious gift. With this mystery card, you know, that you might have to enter a mystery. You know, you might have to walk with the mystery and in the mystery for a while. It might not be immediate. Yeah, the Scorpio might be buried very deep, especially if you bought what the Hierophant was selling in the way of a story. You know, this mystery and this Scorpio, this unearthing, the Hierophant is the structure. The structure is the story. The story is telling you what your values are and what other people are valuing you by. And what other people are valuing you by often become your de facto values, whether you like it or not, and facing that head on needs to happen. And once you do that and you say, okay, well, what are my values? What do I truly want? Where should I be? That process of excavation is about looking at every story that you're told and saying, is that true for, is that story true for me? Am I buying that story? Am I going to internalize that story? Am I going to allow that story to be an operating system? Or does that story have nothing to do with me? You disengage with the old stories and then begin to participate in this excavation around the new stories. And it, you know, it causes innovation. It is an opportunity with assets here. And when we talked about with pile number 1, bringing meaning, your presence to the pain, and excavating in the present for meaning to bring to that pain so that you can release it. And that meaning and that pain create a story that now sets you free and has the power to set others free if you so want to share it. But that communication with yourself is the freeing agent. And with this, that excavation, that I don't know what I want, and that looking for it is the opportunity to find what you're good at, to find what you're created for. And that is where you will excel, and that is where your assets are. You're going to excel in your area of giftedness. Everything else is going to be service, slave service to a structure that tells you how to fit kind of what you can sort of maybe like do. But if you're operating in that area of giftedness, it's part of that excavation. What's working for you, what's not working for you, what is easy for you, what is not easy for you, what do you excel at, what do you not excel at, what can you invest in the way of what you enjoy, and why do you enjoy it? This is a process of getting to know yourself. It's also the process of getting to know the path. It's also the path. And so when you're in the labyrinth and you don't know how to proceed, sometimes it's good to start digging. Maybe you're digging under the labyrinth. Maybe the mystery is underground. And once you find it, you can sell it. Here's the new version. Here's the new story. That assets comes from that journey, from that seeking, and the opportunity to find new things that then you can bring back and say, I found these new things with my area of giftedness in my exploration, and this is where my area of belonging also happens to be on this path because I've done the work. And so it is work, this 8 of coins, but sometimes it's work of pulling away from the opinions of others, because that's all informed by this indoctrination. Either you're for the indoctrination or against it, but it's still an operating system. Pulling out of that operating system leaves you feeling pathless. Finding your own path is a process of discovery around what feels good. And that's the fire, and that's the inspiration that's speaking to you. So when something feels good, the fire is speaking. And when you're in that good feeling place, you're allowing that flame to be stoked. And that inspiration that comes through that experience is again leading you to the path. And so with the 9 of coins on the bottom of the deck establishing you, and the process of finding a way where there is no way in this process, your guides are saying that is where the value is. And so pile number 2, when it comes to facing off with this particular sentinel, going through this initiation to arrive at that tree of knowledge, you are looking at every story that you have been given and saying, am I going to buy this or am I going to dismiss it? And if I'm dismissing it, what creative meaning am I bringing to the experience that shows me a new way? And with that new way, what am I building and innovating? Because that's the path. That's the way we defeat this energy, is with truth, because it is a system of deception. So let's go on. Those of you that are coming to chapter pile 3, those of you who this is your issue and this is what you're working with, I hope that you have gotten what you needed from this energy's influence. So let's leave it there, and I'll see you again soon. Okay, pile number 3, let's go ahead and take a look. So this is actually here because this entire reading is inspired by a reading that I will timestamp below. You can go and see, it's like a mini short reading. And this Ace of Swords, it represents that sentinel, that obstacle, that initiation that needs to be like overcome in order to have access to that mystery sacred tree, that place of knowledge, that release, that freedom, essentially. And so with the Ace of Swords being about disconnection from others more than anything else, because in this particular, as it presents as an obstacle, it's a type of truth that you tell yourself that functions to keep you separate. And that those like aspects came in again, like that earlier reading. If you go and check it, you'll kind of see where I'm seeing this panoramic for the Ace of Swords. But that Ace of Swords representing the obstacle, the sentinel that you need to get by, is actually like a false truth about connectivity or being connected, or what, like it's something that has to be overcome. So let's see what it is, because I'll be honest with you, I'm not even sure what this sentinel, actually like unpacking what their method is and like why they're doing what they're doing, what the revelation and the release is around this healing that we're working towards. This energy wants to help us with grief and shock. So that's very interesting. That kind of, with the guides here and the rest here. Let me sit with that for just a second, because that's kind of like in the, like where this card comes from in terms of like how this reading is constructed in a very strange way. But I'm going with it. I'm going with the experimental inspiration, essentially. And that Ace of Swords from that reading, and that is represented here as this particular obstacle. It had a Hermit in reverse and a 4 of Cups and the Aspirant as cards that were clarifying what it meant. And what it meant in that position, again, I'll just repeat it, is things that you tell yourself that may be true, that function to drive yourself so far into yourself and away from others that you're almost consuming yourself. And that Four of Cups speaks to like what it means to look away from yourself and look towards connection, and have to do so very like intentionally. And so in order to get access to this wisdom, to this truth, to this experience of the divine, this particular sentinel represents, this blockage represents actually a type of loneliness is the best way, being so far in that you're not really connecting, being so far hidden in some senses that you're not all the way connecting as well. With these guides and this rest here, there is caution with the shock and the grief as we move into this space, to recognize that if it's a truth that has driven you in, then it is a harsh one. And so let me see with this shock and this grief here, what we're looking at. And some of that shock, I'm seeing even like the shock of birth, the shock of life. Life is not, we have an expectation. Oh, wow, I'm seeing a real panoramic. With the Ace of Swords being about a certain kind of truth. And that shock and that grief, we have an expectation that when we are like participating with life in a certain way, bringing ourselves to life in a certain way, in a relationship with life in a certain way. And that tree of knowledge is striking me as a relationship. So like, getting through this initiation or getting around this sentinel, first you have to encounter something that you find that is not true, that shocks you into a grief that literally nearly shuts you down. And like, that's kind of what I'm seeing with this, like, because I saw so much with the clarifying cards, like a truth that drives you inside yourself would be something along the lines that like you believed in this love with all of your heart, you believed in this God with all of your heart, you believed in humanity with all of your heart, you believed in like your country with all of your heart, something where you trusted. And especially with the pile number 2, which is where we're coming from, like, one of the things that indoctrination and that lack of indoctrination, or like what it is to find the path and be on the path, once you sort of come into that sense of yourself and that truth of yourself, there might be a real shock and a grief when you realize that what you feel that you have been promised by way of a life and by way of expectation and by way of quality of life isn't necessarily going to be provided. And if it's not going to be provided, what does that mean for you in one way or another? Or, if what you believed in with all of your heart, mind, and soul, and you bet your life on it, turned out to not be true with this Ace of Swords as an obstacle, then what does that do to your ability to even believe in that there's anything to get or go towards in the way of the tree of knowledge? And if... and this is painful, that rest there with your guide says that like this is going to wound you. And when this truth that things are not as expected, that the experience of life is not as it should be, that it's full of horrible pain and horrible obstacles, like that's gonna be a moment. Because this shock here, I keep on seeing a birth. And when you're born, you're in a womb and you're comfortable and it's the whole world. And then it attacks you and it squeezes you and it's like so painful and it rejects you by torturing you out into like a cold, loud, alienated, horrible place, like that shock of birth. This is not what is promised. What was promised is the warm womb. And so like, when we encounter life and it's this shock of birth, this shock of life, instead of what we want and need and expect from periods of incubation, there might be real grief about not being cared or held in a certain kind of way. Because you have the incubation of the womb and then you have the incubation of childhood. And some of us have less incubation of childhood, but there's the incubation of childhood. And then there's adulthood, this shock and this grief about what life really is. And so like that abandonment, that truth, that experience, like that can shut you down. And that can make you feel like if God isn't for me, then everything's against me. But with this shock and this grief, I think the truth and what it means to work with this truth and connect with others is to find that the power that the divine has to save, the power that the divine has to heal is through the participation in relationship with others. And so any horrible truth about an alienation in life that sends you within yourself, the answer is actually found in relationship. And so you'll be searching forever So, but we do have to be with this shock and this grief, because we can't, we have to rest with guides as we like go into this. We have to sort of be in a place of healing or receptivity, because the revelation here, we're going to find what that is. What is the mode of operating for this death card transformation? Yeah, with the success and the fire. Yeah, the Emperor, exploration and cruelty. Yeah, that's what that kind of feels like a little bit. And these cards just tumbled right out. Okay. The victory at the bottom of the deck. Again, this is sort of, we're entering this place of, it's even, you know, when we think about these moments when we encounter the divine in life and what it means to encounter the divine in life. You know, we have these highs, these spiritual awakenings, these spiritual moments, these like hours of reverie, these encounters, and they bring us somewhere, they do something, we are changed by them and in relationship to them. But then we go out into the day-to-day world and we have like, you know, these horrible experiences that like fold us back into a reality where we are powerless, where there is no relationship that, you know, has the ability to move the mountains that need to be moved, because that experience of ecstasy and that ridiculous like electric bill like are not in agreement. You know, and like, so how do you even work with that? And so this notion of like this shock and this grief related to what, getting through this sentinel to that tree of life, that knowledge, that encounter with the divine, that co-creation with the divine kind of a place. It's a relationship. With the Ace of Swords being, it's a relationship with what? What is this relationship with? What is this relationship with if it's going to squeeze me into a narrow, bone-breaking, suffocating tube and spit me out into the cold, and then like ignore me when I'm crying? Like, what is that, right? So there has to be this encounter that is actually quite unexpected when it comes to, I believe I'm loved, I believe I'm cared about, I believe I'm valued, I have faith that I'm going to get there. How does that stand up against the shock and the grief of some of the experiences of cruelty that we have on the journey? And so that's kind of what has to be reconciled here with, in terms of that third sentinel that blocks you from that path. And I think in some ways these go in order. That last sentinel, you know, says you can believe and have faith. You can find something that you love enough to have passionate about, to have put the faith in that you're going to get where you're going. You can stand up and find that authentic expression and that authentic path that will lead you there. But that journey is you're going to experience shock. And that journey, that shock might lead you to grief that kind of shuts you down around your actual relationship with this knowledge. And so you first have to sort of encounter something in the way of a mystery that's a little bit terrifying, related to how powerful or not powerful you truly are, and what relating to power even means, what it is to even have a relationship with power, even power over your own life, right here with the grief. And so let's get into it, because this is kind of like a tall order, you know, I will say. Let's go ahead and get some cards. There's this aspect of faith that I've been working with. It's a kind of like a spell, an affirmation spell, whatever you want to call it. I call it a spell, but it also might be an affirmation to you. So, you know, I've been saying everything that I am doing is preparing me for where I'm going. Everything I've ever done is preparing me for where I'm going. It's a belief in your future. And every time you say that and affirm that, and every time that spell is spoken, you are affirming there's a future. You are believing that there is a future. You are coming against any dogma or systems of thought control that say that there is no future. Like, foreshortened future is a trauma response that is a result of learned helplessness related to that Hierophant of pile number 2, or like just basically the systems of oppression. That's the same. And so when we are taking this truth, you know what I mean? When the way that you fight, this is an interesting thing, because it's like this truth in your head that keeps you from others has to be fought. How? Okay, let's keep going, because I'm even getting lost with this a little bit. Because the shock and the grief comes from an awareness around powerlessness, about the stories that you're in, that you're predestined to be a part of, that you're meant to bring these messages through. You are the messenger. And as the messenger, you are here to bring life to the stories that you were meant to participate in. And as you're bringing life to those stories that you were meant to participate in, you're meant to bring meaning from the world and the community and the interactions with others and with what others have created back to that source of pain, that presence to that pain, that meaning to that pain, to transform it into catharsis and then create with it an inspiration that you then pass on. There is an ecosystem at play here that you're a part of. But there is a powerlessness that we step into at the sight of anything in the form of God. And the Hierophant as a form of God is a man-made structure that says, I am God and you have to come to work every day and we are capitalism, right? That's the Hierophant in one way or another. It's those structures. It's school, it's church, it's the government. But when you're walking your own path and when you're in connection with the divine, which those situations will force you into connection with the divine, you will be led by spirit into yourself to find your way out. That led into yourself to find your way out means you will be entering a wilderness, but you're not meant to stay in that wilderness wandering alone forever. You're meant to allow that wilderness to lead you into connection with others, which is why the work we did with the previous pile was all about that process of discovery about what feels good and what you desire. And so that's the light, the inspiration leading you out, the fire leading you out to bring what you have learned to that place of belonging, based on your own area of giftedness that you discover by figuring out what you like. And so like once you are traveling this journey and you have to encounter this presence of the divine that is God, and God, Goddess, it's a they, right? And so when you encounter God, one of the first things that happens is you realize you are not that God. You do not have the power over life and death. You do not have the power over the weather. You do not have the power over the nature or the nature of man. And the nature of man includes the murderers. So when you really identify that which is more powerful than you is in some way a God, that's a terrifying moment of shock and grief that comes every single time we put our whole lives on the line, or we throw all of our effort into something and it fails. And at that moment of failure, we can very quickly give up. And so that's where this sentinel, how you defeat this sentinel that says there may be, yeah, right, because this sentinel says, the God that you just gave up on over there in pile number 2 by way of the government, the church, the school, the aspiration, the status, whatever it is that you had to sort of find the truth to the counterfeit in order to find your path and find yourself and find your authentic expression. That structure was there for a reason. That structure was there to keep you from the knowledge that there is something that has more power than you, and it's called nature. There is something that has more power than you, and it's the reality of death and life. And so when you're able to sort of accept the reality of death and life, and that something has to die and something has to be born, and that there is a churning, and that change is something that you cannot avoid. Change is not something that you have power over. Change is God. You do not have power over God. The revelation here is that to make friends with God, to be in a relationship with God, to co-create with God, is to co-create with change. And so when you recognize the truth that God can't help you avoid change because God is change, that's getting through this sentinel of you can't avoid change. And so you might as well give up, because all your efforts can be thwarted when something goes in a new direction and you have to adapt to it. And maybe you don't adapt, right? That's this shock and this grief that says, oh my gosh, how am I supposed to do this? Even if I get it all and I do it all and I arrive at the goal, something can happen. And so this death and this rebirth is that's a card of change. It's being in relationship to change, but that brings success because you are adaptable. because you are easily inspired, because you trust that inspiration, because that inspiration that comes along with the change, when you are able to yield to it and allow it to move through you into this change, like success, right? You're on a wheel. And so this guide says, when you begin to accept the nature of God is change, that's when you can be in that garden with that knowledge at that tree. Yeah. But that doesn't do a lot for us if like change can be really bad, because why is the God that is change also bringing storms of fire and thunder, right? How do we work with that? So let's get some cards, because that is what we're here. We're here to be at the foot of the sentinel that says, you have no power over change. You are at the mercy of change, and therefore you need the structures to insulate you from the possibility of change. And those are the structures from pile number 2. That's the Hierophant. And that's not your path. That's not yourself. But if you want to be on a path that's safe, you have to abandon yourself. That's what this sentinel says. He stops you and says, yeah, the truth is too hard for you. You didn't realize the bargain you had when you weren't looking for the truth. But the truth is, God is change. It's something you can't fight with. It's something that has power over you. It's something that's going to get you whether you like it or not. Change is coming. Change is going to get you. Change is going to take what you're making and make you change it. Change is God. So that superpower comes when you're like, to participate with the divine, to participate with life, to participate with the divine, genius of inspiration, and to make meaning of it and to bring it into the world. It requires a relationship with death and rebirth at every juncture that allows for there to be an openness towards change and the success that change can bring. And it's scary, right? Like we see this and we're like, don't change a damn thing. Don't go changing things. Because I feel that way constantly. Because the 7 of Cups is confusion. It's delusion. It's a belief that there should be some stagnant way in which we go about things, with the truth and the King of Swords here. And we've got the Father of Fire. This is the Father of Fire here. We've got the King of Wands and the King of Swords. Okay, so we've got the Ace of Swords and the King of Swords, which is this mind over matter truth, sword that cuts you free, used by this fire of Father that says, I can't avoid change, and that's not something to give up on account of. It's something to step into a relationship with. And that's a warrior, that's a bravery. That's a willingness to participate in the dance. That means you're not going to stay the same an hour from now, 2 hours from now, 3 days from now, 2 years from now. You're going to change, and you're going to be different. And everyone around you is going to be different. And none of the things that you're attached to will be the same, ever. And you have to begin to hold things with an open hand and dance and play and interact with change. Because you are an infinite life form, even though you have periods of incubation at various stages of the life-forming phases. And so when we think about this shock, the Emperor, control, how do I get control? How do I get control over the change? And the cruelty of what it means to try and take control. Because once you try to take control of life and death, once you try and take control of change, then you really have to begin to subjugate others, and you have to climb that ladder, and you have to participate in those comparisons, and you have to sign on to those structures, and in numbers try to defeat the power of change. But if change is the God that is meant to shepherd you through this life, then what are you really doing? And so like this revelation that is coming in around this grief over things can get taken away, people can die, change can happen. We're meant to explore every single time that dial of the wheel of fortune shifts. And so taking that the guides are saying, there's some rest in trying to there's a rest in allowing yourself to be guided. And one of the easiest ways to allow yourself to be guided is to not expect that you can control a damn thing. You can participate actively. You can strategize, co-creating with the divine by way of the inspiration given you. You have to be experiencing for the divine to work through you into your life and have changes actually occur. Living equals changes. Dying equals staying staying the same. And if you're participating in not growth, If you're participating in not living, if you're participating in not creating, then you're participating in some level of consuming and decaying. And so when we think about this death and birth cycles as something that we're meant to participate in, these changes are like, this is to be tangled with. How do we get through that Ace of Swords truth that God is change? Well, the success is in going with it, participating with the change, leaning into the change, working with the change, learning to be this fire warrior, the king warrior, the warrior king. It's like hard to get this out, being a warrior king when it comes to looking at your options and being willing to take any of the options that appeals to you, because everything is going to change and you're going to move with that change, and that's where your success is going to be. And the shock of not having control and the cruelty that you see all around you about trying to gain control is something you're meant to explore a new direction away from. And processing that grief with the Son of Fire and Dominion over here, there is a grief over not having control. There is a grief over the acceptance of not being in control, not having control, not feeling in control. But that Ace of Cups is where we come back to that original King of Wands moment when we stepped in with the fire, moving toward fighting for something that you really love, participating with love, participating with your love for yourself in that authentic expression, participating in love with the divine by creating into every position and place that you find yourself. Bringing that fire energy that allows you to have access. And it's not just access, we had the entire purpose of all three sentinels that stand between you and that tree of knowledge is to keep you from the wisdom and the truth that you are loved, valued, cared for, adored. And when you get to this position with the God that is change, and you step into co-creation that loves, accepts, and is joyfully participating in what it is to be alive and operating through change as something that brings new life, as something that brings innovation, as something that moves inspiration, as something that moves the progress of humanity, as something that brings victory by way of struggle. To accept that you are loved by this energy, valued by this energy, adored by this energy, created to specialize in some fashion in participating in that change and that innovation. The fear, I don't want the instability because then things are going to change. Like, what's going to happen to me? You are the messenger with this 10 of coins, right? And the 9 of swords, back to this moment of like, well, yeah, but it's terrifying. Right, but change is terrifying. Change is terrifying because it confronts my ability to support myself, support others. Change is terrifying because it confronts, my ability to get up every day and have the health to get through the day. A change could mean taking what I've got that I value away from me and leaving me without it. Like, there's so many ways in which change is a tyrannical God. When we think about the way that we have experienced our efforts to control or others' efforts to control. And so that Page of Swords being the messenger and the wealth with that 10 of coins, that's not just your wealth. Again, that is going to be the legacy. That is going to be everyone who survived their life before you in your lineage survived that life to create you. And in that creation, they created a messenger for the entire ancestry that was going through these experiences, these stories, making meaning and setting all the captives free along the way. All the ancestors that hadn't crossed because they needed to have that experience through your eyes and through your experience because you're wearing their nose and they can see through you and they can have that relief. Sometimes that's what we're doing. But other times it doesn't matter because it's still about releasing you. It's still about your own meaning making and release. That is a wealth. That message is your wealth. That message is what establishes you. That message has the power to create a space for you of belonging in the communicating of that message. And so this fear that keeps you from that vision and that mission to be held in that way, that's everything that these sentinels represent, is to talk you out of the love that you are created with. And that you have like an ally in this process with change. Change is your ally. When change is your ally, Like that's that's everything. You know, with the Empress here about co-creating and giving birth to, and the Father of Water, and this is where the water comes in, this great love. When you recognize that God is change, or that there is a God that is very powerful, that is change, that can't be defeated. It depends how you want to look at it. And this God has a lot of different characteristics, but one of those characteristics is change that cannot be avoided. But then you take that step into that garden towards that knowledge instead of running away from it in fear. But you step towards it and you realize that that change is there for you, for your growth. Because you don't want to stay in the womb forever. It's just incubated in the womb for a little while. You don't want to stay in childhood forever. It's just incubated in childhood for a little while. And what it means to step into co-creation with the divine, with that knowledge of good and evil, in that garden, past these sentinels that stand in your way, is to now begin to willfully participate with the kind of change that, yes, will lead to your aging and your death, adulthood. And that can be terrifying. But when you begin to accept that you are on this journey and that you are loved on this journey, all the way to the bottom of the ocean with the Father of Water, when that Ace of Cups is the divine love, then that effort that you're putting into trying to have dominion over everything is released. And you're able to be in a different kind of relationship with this energy of the Hermit. You know, the energy of the Hermit that drives you into yourself so that you are basically just stuck in your own wilderness, following the divine around, refusing to go outside of yourself. You begin to, again, like consume yourself. What it means to overcome this sentinel of change is unavoidable. Change is God. Is not to go running into yourself to avoid any possible change and keep the least, amount of trauma. It's to actually allow the divine to lead you out into the world with that knowledge that you are loved, fully guided by that knowledge of that love, by something that is an agent of change. But it's also so many other things. And what you bring into the world through participating with the raw materials before you, creating something out of nothing, is the participation of bringing God into the world with you. And you do that by allowing for the change that takes place in the death and birth process. And all creation operates on that axis of death and rebirth. The idea has to die in order for the piece of clay to become the form that the idea brought forth, because it's going to be a different form than the idea brought forth. And we have to constantly be working with those energies of differences and those possibilities of differences. And when the revelation ends up being that those differences, that change, is something that loves you, is something that you love, is something that's for you, then the need to dominate every single thing begins to alleviate a little bit. And so to confront that sentinel of there will be change is I love change. That is the initiation. That is where you cross that threshold. And then when you say I love change, and there is problems with that, that's not easy, you know what I mean? Like, we are still terrorized by the fears of like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen if I get sick? Or if I am sick, what's going to happen if I don't get better? You know, when we accept that life and death and rebirth is something that we are in for a very long time, it's the experience of existence. Again, the womb, incubated world. Childhood, incubated world. Adulthood, phases of adulthood, phases of incubation. But where do we get released? That's where we bring back that fire, that faith. That's where the access to this knowledge of ourselves as loved comes in really handy. Because then this journey that we're on is a journey that we're on with change to learn about who this aspect of God is and what it is to create with the aspect of change. Because that's going to be critical, for whatever this next phase is. When we say that spell, I am being prepared for what I'm meant for, or any variation of that, or as an affirmation, everything I'm going through is preparing me for what I am meant for. We root in a different kind of knowledge. We connect to a different root system with that tree of knowledge. And we're able to go a great distance farther. We're able to explore from the safety of that belief that we are loved, that everything that we have gone through is preparing us for what we're meant for. And that's true even just on a biological level. And what we're meant for is something that love prepares for us. What we're meant for is something that change prepares us for. and that the universe is for us, nurturing us, and that when we nurture our goals and we co-create nothing into something, that's actions of divine energies working through you. And so that 11th house of like step to the edge, you have no control, you're not going to have control. What does it mean to dethrone the inner demand for control over your inner and outer environment? Is it mean a chaos that is going to put you at odds with the Hierophant in pile number 2? Maybe. But as a warrior, you bring the energy of, why am I here? What do I love? What does it mean to communicate from that place of love? How does it operate to be received from that too? And some of this is work, but with the roots, like where you root. If you're rooting and I have to control the environment, then you're in bad soil. If you're rooting and I don't need to control the environment, I am loved by the divine, I am nurtured by what gives me life and sustains my life. And I participate with that life by calling in these energies of fire, of water, of earth, and air. Because rooting in that support and that sense of yourself as supported at a spiritual level, at a gnosis level, allows you to take these voyages, to take that inspiration and move it into a place that will establish you through the relationships that you build by confronting this notion that you have to have control over your environment at all times, which means mitigating every relationship you have by how it's going to impact that control, and then mitigating those relationships that are or are not impacting that control based on the energy input and output and all of the exchanges and then the systems and the money, and this is how we relate. Just step into relating to the divine, and relating to the divine open-handed. Let the changes change. Let's participate with change. Let's create with change. Let's use everything that we have, including the inspiration that brings that change and helps us move through it. We're not alone in that change. We're not abandoned in that change. It is the substance of the divine that participates with us in that growth. And we can release this need to be in control of everything. And we can step into this faith that says we're loved, we're guided. And we can be rooted in that as we establish ourselves. And when we bring what we have created in authentic expression into the world based on our giftedness, and we create with others who have similar giftedness or who are in a similar place that we are led towards as community with the 11th house, that's going to be the experience of victory here. That's going to be what it means to commune at that level of knowledge with the divine in community. And it's all a little bit complicated because, community does kind of create these boundaries, and you're fighting with these sentinels, especially with the institution sentinel. But the process of creativity, inspiration being like taking in that Holy Spirit, and it's not a Christian term, but it can be, and it is, but it isn't, taking in that spirit of inspiration, that divine genius, participating with it to create from nothing into something, into your world. And that something is connection, and that connection is community, and that community is the knowledge. It's the tree of good and evil, where this understanding of what it means to, work with all of these elements, fire, water, air, water, air, and earth. All of those elements are why we're here right now at this material plane, and working with them and learning from them, and not just like their tangible stuff, but their spiritual stuff. And so when we bring that into community, then we really begin to build something in collaboration that is quite powerful. So our guides are saying, this is the sentinel where the way that you get through this door, the way that you overcome this initiation and move through it, is by way of adopting peace. A peace that does pass any understanding of you have this and you have that, or you don't have that and now you can be at peace. It's a peace that doesn't make sense. It's a peace that's not based in certainty. You bring peace to the threshold of this sentinel, and you open that door. But you really can't get there without it. And so it requires this trust that you are loved, even if change has been something that you've not been able to avoid. Even if change has thrust you into stories where making meaning of it has been so hard that it has almost broke you. But that process of bringing the divine in, you know, that's when we go back to pile number 1's lesson, back to that first sentinel. And we bring the faith. And so like this is all use of these technologies of faith in overcoming these obstacles that are designed to keep you from the knowledge that you are loved, and that in that knowledge that you are loved, suddenly that there is change and growth becomes okay, because you can trust that it's leading you where you're supposed to be, that all of these processes are leading you where you're supposed to be. And no, it doesn't look like the success that you're offered when you adopt the Hierophant structures, because that was always a lie. That's always deception. It looks like a different kind of success, and it's meant to be discovered, and it's not obvious, and it does happen as we travel through the mysteries. It is not handed to us. We come upon it. And so with that, pile number 3, I'm glad we got to do this. This is really powerful. I'm going to go ahead and set this up and send this off. So I'm just trying to think if there's anything else left that is not being addressed, and I think that's it. The channel has definitely gone sort of quiet. So with that, I'm going to end this reading. I hope that this was helpful. I hope we feel a little bit better about what it is to attend to these challenges. Some of this stuff like does feel like, I'll be honest with you, I'm just going to say it. A lot of what I'm doing has some element of like, this sounds like, you know, a savior message or something like that. But the bottom line is, like, all of these technologies of faith that have worked for hundreds of thousands of years work. These belief systems work. They always have. The placebo effect is, you know, you take the pill, you know, and it's not the pill that heals you. It's the story about the pill that heals you. Belief is permission. This is something that my guides have told me that I always say, and it's true. These beliefs work. And so when we're able to use this stuff in a way that says this technology of faith, this technology of belief, this understanding of myself as loved instead of an understanding of myself as abandoned, this understanding of myself as like acknowledged instead of an understanding of myself as random. These are choices that we make, and one choice leads to a certain kind of building of a life, and another choice leads to another kind of building in a life. But when we're of a life, and when we're mystics, you know, and when we are spiritual, and when we are using the spiritual technology, and it is working with us, what it means to sort of put the pedal to the metal with some of that wisdom is to say, I'm going to choose that I'm loved, and I'm going to operate through that love and with that love, and I'm going to bring that energy co-creatively into the world, and it's going to have a place with me and through me. That's when the belief becomes real. That's when it becomes something that tangibly operates in the world as itself, as a God, as your God. And so this is something to participate in and see how it works. So play with these things, play with these beliefs, employ these beliefs. If you can't make it work because it's like telling yourself something that doesn't feel true, look at pile number 2, being up against a structure that informs you versus the experience that releases you, and how you like work with what it means to like adopt a story or reject a story, and the magical power therein with that process is yours for the taking, as long as you can get out of your way, or get out of the way of the structure that tells you otherwise, and that is actually designed to hurt you. So that's enough. Let's leave it there. It was so great to do this reading with you. I'm glad we did this, and I'll see you again soon.